I rewrote my will on a Tuesday morning, between boiling eggs and replacing the batteries in my kitchen clock. It was 8:17 a.m., March 12, 2024. I remember because the receipt from Dalton and Pierce Notary Services is still clipped to the inside of my desk drawer. $3.20 for the appointment. $45 for certified copies. Expensive for a man who eats oatmeal without sugar and still cuts his tea bags in half. But clarity, I've learned, is rarely cheap. The eggs cracked poorly that morning. Shell fragments floating like small, stubborn truths I didn't bother fishing out. I ate them anyway, standing at the counter, watching the condensation crawl down the window above the sink. Outside, the neighbor's sprinkler clicked with mechanical indifference. Left, right, left. A rhythm. Predictable. Honest. Unlike family. My name is Harold Whitaker. I am 73 years old, a widower of 6 years, and, according to my children, a man whose mental sharpness has started to decline. That particular diagnosis came from my daughter, Elise, during dinner on February 28, 2024.7:42 p.m. I checked the oven clock when she said it. "You forgot to salt the potatoes, Dad." "I didn't forget," I told her. "I just didn't want salt." She smiled the way people do when they've already decided something about you. "Of course," she said softly, exchanging a glance with her husband, Mark. "Of course you didn't." That was the beginning, or at least the beginning of me noticing. Before that, there had been smaller things. Questions dressed as concern. "Have you thought about simplifying your finances, Dad?" January 15th. "Managing multiple accounts at your age must be exhausting." January 22nd. "You know, probate can be a nightmare if things aren't organized properly." February 3rd. Each sentence polite, measured, clean, like knives wrapped in linen. My son Daniel was less subtle. He preferred numbers. "Let's be realistic," he said during that same February dinner. Cutting into the roast, I had paid $46.80 for at Brookline Market. "The house alone is worth what now, 800? 850. 872, I corrected him. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "You had it appraised?" "Last August." "Why didn't you tell us?" I shrugged. No one asked. That wasn't entirely true. They had asked, just not directly. They circled the topic like vultures with etiquette. The house sits on 0.6 acres, 2 stories, built in 1998. I paid $312,000 for it. Paid it off in 2016, the same year Margaret died. Cancer has a way of rearranging priorities and bank accounts. There's also the brokerage account. $417,000 as of last statement. February 29th, 2024. Dividends modest, but steady. Utilities run me about $280 a month. Groceries, $340 if I'm feeling indulgent. I am not a wealthy man, but I am, apparently, a valuable one. After dinner that night, Elise insisted on doing the dishes. She never does the dishes. I stood in the hallway, pretending to adjust the thermostat, and listened. "We need to move faster," she whispered. "I know," Mark replied, "but if we push too hard..." He's slipping already. "Did you see the salt thing?" A pause. Water running. "And the accounts?" Mark asked. "I'll talk to him. Maybe suggest consolidating everything. If we get power of attorney." Their voices dropped. "But not enough. Power of attorney. It's a clinical phrase. Efficient. Bloodless. Like removing furniture from a house you plan to sell." I went to bed at 9:15 that night. Didn't sleep until nearly midnight. The refrigerator hummed. Pipes clicked. Somewhere a car alarm chirped once and died. And in the quiet, I began to understand something simple, something obvious, something I should have seen years ago. They weren't worried about my memory. They were waiting for my absence. That realization didn't come with anger. Not at first. Just a kind of recalibration, like adjusting a crooked picture frame. By morning, I had a plan. Nothing dramatic. No shouting. No accusations. Just paperwork. I called Dalton and Pierce at 9:03 a.m. "Good morning," a young woman answered. "How can we assist you today?" "I'd like to update my will," I said. Completely. There was a pause. Brief, professional. "Of course, sir. Do you have an existing document?" "I do," I said, glancing at the folder on my desk. "But it's no longer accurate." And that, I suppose, was the most honest thing I'd said in weeks. By the time my children realized just how inaccurate it had become. Well, that came later. If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. The next time they came over, they brought wine. Expensive wine. The kind with a label that looks like it was designed by someone who doesn't believe in lowercase letters. Napa Valley. 2018. Daniel placed it on my kitchen counter like an offering. $2.40. I later checked. I still have the empty bottle under the sink. I keep things like that now. Proof. Thought we'd do something nice tonight, Dad, he said, loosening his tie. Already making himself at home. Family dinner. It's been a while. It had been 12 days. Elise arrived 10 minutes later with a cheesecake from Bellman's Bakery, $1.68. I know because she left the receipt in the box, and I have a habit of reading things people forget. Mark followed her in, carrying nothing but his phone and that permanent expression of polite calculation. Smells good in here, Elise said, kissing the air near my cheek. I was standing at the stove, stirring a pot of clam chowder. Not the canned kind. Real cream. Fresh thyme. Bacon I'd render myself. Dinner, including ingredients, came to $86.17. I've started keeping track of these things. We sat down at 6:35 p.m. The table was set properly. Margaret's old plates, the heavy ones with the blue rim, cloth napkins, real silverware. I still polish it once a month, even though no one notices. For the first 15 minutes, it was almost normal. They talked about traffic, about Daniel's latest opportunity, something involving commercial storage units and a partner I wouldn't trust to water a houseplant. Elise mentioned a vacation they were planning. Italy, of course, Florence. About $18,000 all in, she said casually, as if discussing the weather. Life short, she added, taking a sip of that $240 wine. Yes, I said. It is. That's when the shift happened. It's subtle, if you don't know what to look for. A pause that lasts half a second too long. A glance exchanged across the table. A fork set down just a little too carefully. Mark cleared his throat. Harold, he began, folding his hands like he was about to discuss interest rates or minor surgery. We've been meaning to talk to you about something important. Of course you have. I nodded, spooning chowder into my bowl. Go ahead. Elise leaned forward slightly, concerned, carefully arranged on her face. We've noticed you've been managing a lot on your own lately. I've been managing on my own since 1972, I said. A small smile from Daniel. Tight, controlled. Sure, Dad. No one's saying you haven't. But things get complicated. Accounts, bills, taxes, he gestured vaguely, as if complexity were something that floated in the air. I paid $6,840 in property taxes this year, I said. On time. January 12th. Silence. Brief but telling. Mark stepped in again, smooth as ever. It's not about whether you can handle it. It's about making things easier, safer, for everyone. There it was, that word, everyone. Elise reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her fingers were cold. We just think it might be time to organize things more formally. Maybe consolidate your accounts. Set up a power of attorney, just in case. Just in case. I looked at her hand, then at Daniel, then at Mark. 3 faces. 3 versions of the same expectation. How formal? I asked. Mark didn't hesitate. He pulled a folder from his bag, thin, beige, already tabbed, prepared. We spoke with an attorney, he said. Nothing binding yet, of course. Just a draft. It would give Elise authority to help manage your finances, pay bills, oversee investments, protect your assets. Protect? From whom, I wondered. Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching me. It's standard stuff, Dad. Honestly, most people do it earlier than this. Earlier than 73, apparently. I wiped my mouth with a napkin, folded it neatly, bought myself a few seconds. And if I say no, another pause. This one heavier. Elisa's smile didn't break, but it thinned. Why would you say no? She asked softly. A good question, when I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for the wine, poured myself half a glass, and took a slow sip. It tasted expensive, smooth, carefully aged, like the conversation. I'll think about it, I said. Relief moved across their faces in unison. Quick, almost synchronized. They thought they'd made progress. They hadn't. What they didn't know, what none of them knew. Sitting there in my dining room, eating my $86 dinner and planning their $18,000 vacation. Was that 6 days earlier, at 10:42 a.m., I had already signed a document that made their little folder completely irrelevant. I watched them finish their wine, and for the first time in a long while, I let them talk. It happened 3 days after the dinner. Sunday, 4:12 p.m. I remember because I had just finished replacing the air filter in the hallway vent, $19.99 at Home Depot, and was washing my hands when my phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. Elisa's name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hi, Dad." Her voice was bright. Too bright. "Just checking in. How are you feeling today?" "Like a man who just wrestled with a stubborn air filter and won," I said. "You?" She laughed. A little too quickly. "Oh, you know, busy. Always busy." There was noise behind her, muffled voices, the hum of a television, the faint clink of glass. Not her house. Or, if it was, she wasn't alone. We spoke for another minute. Small things. Weather. Her trip planning. Whether I'd given any more thought to the documents. "I've been considering it," I said. "Good," she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "That's really good, Dad." Then she said, "Hold on 1 second, okay?" And the line didn't disconnect. That was the mistake. At first, I thought she'd just muted herself. But then, he's already softening. Daniel's voice. Clear. Close. I didn't move. My hand stayed on the counter, damp from the sink, fingers resting near the knife block. I could see my reflection faintly in the microwave door. An old man slightly hunched, listening to something he wasn't meant to hear. "You sure?" Mark asked. "Yeah," Elise said. He didn't push back this time, just said he'd think about it. A pause. Ice clinking in a glass. "We need signatures," Daniel said. "Thinking doesn't mean anything." "It will," Elise replied. "He's predictable. Give him a few days, follow up gently. Make it about safety again." Safety. I leaned back against the counter, slow, careful. My heart wasn't racing. That surprised me. It was steady, like I was listening to a weather report. "How fast can we move once it's signed?" Mark asked. "Immediately," Daniel said. "I already talked to First National. With POA, we can consolidate everything within a week. Sell off the brokerage positions, move the cash." "Sell, just like that. And the house?" Mark asked. Another pause. "Longer this time. We don't sell right away," Elise said. "Not until we have medical documentation. If we push too soon, it looks bad." "Looks bad. So we wait." Mark pressed. "We position it." Daniel cut in. "Start talking about assisted living. Nothing fancy, $4, $500 a month. Maybe $5,200 if we need to make it look good. The place in Brooksideha's availability." Brookside. I know Brookside. Beige walls. Fluorescent lights. The smell of overcooked vegetables and resignation. "And the house?" Mark repeated. Daniel exhaled, impatient. "House goes for around $850,000. Maybe more if the market holds. After fees, we're looking at what? $810,000 net? Split 3 ways, minus expenses." 3 ways. Interesting. "And his accounts?" Mark asked. "Roughly $400,000. Elise said. "Plus what Everson checking." "417. Daniel corrected automatically. "As of last month." Of course he knew. There was a brief silence, then a low whistle. "So what over $1 million total?" Mark said. "Closer to 1.2. Dana replied. "Depends on timing." Timing. I closed my eyes for a moment. Not out of pain, not even anger, just calculation. "And he doesn't suspect anything?" Mark asked. A small laugh from Elise. "He still thinks this is about helping him pay bills." Another round of quiet amusement. Glass against glass. "To helping Dad," Daniel said. "To helping Dad," they echoed. I opened my eyes and looked at the kitchen around me. The clean counters, the old clock ticking steadily above the doorway. Margaret's magnets still holding grocery lists on the fridge. $1.2 million. That's what I was worth to them. Not as a father, not as a man, as a timeline. "Elise." I said into the phone. Silence. A sudden rustle. A sharp intake of breath. "Dad." Her voice snapped back, strained now. Alert. "I think you forgot to hang up." Nothing. Just breathing on the other end. Then carefully. Oh my God. "I'm so sorry, I didn't realize." "It's all right," I said. And it was. Strangely enough. Because now everything was clear. "No harm done," I added. But that wasn't entirely true. The harm had already been done. What remained was the correction. The following morning, I made breakfast the same way I always do. 2 eggs, 1 slice of toast, black tea, steeped exactly 4 minutes. The routine matters. It keeps the mind from drifting into unnecessary places. But that morning my mind was precise. At 9:10 a.m., I sat at my desk, the same desk I bought in 1984 for $220. Solid oak, still holds steady. Unlike people, I opened the top drawer and took out 3 folders. The first, existing will 2019. The second, brokerage statements. The third, Dalton and Pierce, March 12th. I placed them side by side, aligning the edges carefully. There's something calming about straight lines, order, intent. Then I picked up the phone and dialed the number I had written down 6 days earlier. "Good morning, Dalton and Pierce." The same young woman answered. "This is Harold Whitaker," I said. "We met last Tuesday." "Of course, Mr. Whitaker. How can we assist you today?" "I'd like to finalize the secondary documents we discussed." A brief pause. Papers shuffling. "Yes, sir. The trust amendments and transfer instructions." "Exactly." There was no hesitation in my voice. "None at all. Would you like to come in, or shall we arrange a mobile notary?" "I'll come in," I said. 10:30. "Perfect. We'll be ready." I hung up and looked around the room. The bookshelf, Margaret's photograph, taken in 2008, Cape Cod, wind in her hair, laughing at something I could no longer remember. The small crack in the ceiling I never bothered to fix. A life, quiet, earned, not for sale. Dalton and Pierce sits on the second floor of a modest brick building on Jefferson Street. No marble floors, no unnecessary luxury, just clean carpets and people who understand the value of paper. At 10:28 a.m., I was already seated. Across from me sat Thomas Pierce himself, late 50s, gray at the temples, the kind of man who listens more than he speaks, which is why I trusted him. "We've prepared everything according to your instructions," he said, sliding a stack of documents toward me. "But before you sign, I want to confirm one more time. You're comfortable with the structure?" "I am." He nodded. "The revocable trust now holds the house, the brokerage account, and the savings. Upon your passing, the assets will be distributed according to the updated terms." "I understand. And your children," he paused carefully, "are no longer primary beneficiaries." "No," I said. "They are not." There it was, clean, final. Instead, the allocations were different. $50,000 to Elise, $50,000 to Daniel. Enough to avoid legal drama. Not enough to reward calculation. The house, valued at $872,000, transferred into trust, designated for sale upon my passing, with proceeds directed elsewhere. The brokerage account, $417,000, already in motion. Partial liquidation scheduled. Funds to be distributed across 3 places. A local veterans housing program, the public library endowment Margaret used to support, and a scholarship fund, small but specific, for students who actually work for something. No vacations in Florence. No $18,000 indulgences. Just purpose. "And the control provisions?" I asked. Pierce adjusted his glasses. "In the event of incapacity, authority is assigned to the trustee we discussed, not your family." "Good. No power of attorney granted to any of your children. All prior drafts voided." "Excellent." He studied me for a moment. "If I may ask, Mr. Whitaker, was there a specific reason for the change?" I met his gaze. "Yes," I said. Clarity. He didn't press further. Professionals rarely do. At 10:42 a.m., I signed the final page. My hand didn't shake, not even slightly. Pierce stamped the documents. Notary seal pressed firmly into paper. Official. Recognized. Irreversible. "Would you like certified copies?" he asked. 3, I said, and 1 digital. Of course. By 11:15 a.m., it was done. Completely done. Outside, the air was cool. Early spring. The kind of day Margaret would have insisted on a walk. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, adjusting my coat, feeling lighter. Not happy. Not sad. Just settled. Like a ledger, finally balanced. That evening, at 7:03 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Daniel." I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. Dad, he said, his tone carefully neutral. I was thinking we should sit down this week, go over those documents together. Of course you were. I looked at the clock on the wall, 7:04 now. Predictable. That sounds like a good idea, I said. Relief, subtle but immediate, slipped into his voice. Great. Maybe Thursday. Thursday works. Perfect, he said. We'll bring everything. Make it easy for you. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. I'm sure you will, I said. And when I hung up, I placed the phone down gently on the table. Because, for the first time, I knew something they didn't. And Thursday was going to be very interesting. They arrived early. 6:42 p.m. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Daniel rang the doorbell with a kind of restrained urgency. The same way he used to knock on my office door when he was 16 and needed money for something he didn't want to explain. I opened the door, slowly. Dad, he said, stepping in without waiting. Good to see you. Elise followed, smiling too wide, holding a folder. The folder. Beige. Tabbed. I recognized it immediately. Mark came last, already scanning the room like he was evaluating square footage. Smells nice. Elise said. It's just roast chicken, I replied. Sit down. Dinner was simpler this time. No wine, just water. I wanted clarity. We sat at the table at exactly 7:00 p.m. Daniel didn't even pretend. All right, he said, placing both hands on the table. Let's talk about getting things organized. Efficient. Direct. Hungry. Elise opened the folder, sliding papers toward me with careful precision. We had an attorney draft everything, she said. It's really straightforward, Dad. Just gives me authority to help manage things. Bills, accounts, the house. The house? I repeated. Only if necessary, she added quickly. Just in case something happens. Something always happens eventually. Mark leaned forward slightly. This is really about protecting your assets, he said, making sure nothing gets mismanaged. I almost smiled at that. Mismanaged. I picked up the top page. Power of attorney. Financial control. Full access. My name at the top. Elise's name underneath. Prepared. Clean. Efficient. Like a receipt. And you need me sign this tonight? I asked. Daniel nodded. The sooner, the better. It just makes everything easier moving forward. Moving forward. I set the paper down carefully. Aligned it with the edge of the table. Old habits. And after that, I asked. A pause. Elise answered. Well, we'd probably consolidate accounts. Simplify things. Maybe look at long-term care options, just planning ahead. Brookside? I asked. Silence. Sharp. Immediate. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Where did you hear that? I leaned back in my chair. Oh, I said lightly, I hear things. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Elise recovered first. Dad, no one is sending you anywhere, she said quickly. This is just about being prepared. Prepared, I repeated. I let the words sit there for a moment. Then I reached for my own folder. Black, leather, heavier than theirs. I placed it on the table between us. What's that? Daniel asked. Clarity, I said. I opened it slowly, taking out 3 documents. Thick paper. Official seals. Notary stamps visible even from across the table. I slid the first one toward him. Revocable living trust. Dated. March 12, 2024, 10:42 a.m. Daniel frowned, scanning the page. Elise leaned in. Mark stood up slightly, trying to read faster. What is this? Elise asked. My updated estate plan, I said. You updated it? Daniel's voice tightened. Completely. They flipped through the pages now. Faster. Less controlled. I watched their faces change. Confusion first. Then calculation. Then realization. This doesn't. Elise stopped. Flipped another page. This removes us. Not entirely, I said calmly. Page 14. She turned. Read. $50,000. Her lips parted slightly. 50,000? Daniel said, louder now. That's what is this? A joke? No, I said. It's a decision. Mark found the section about the house. It's going to a trust, he said. And then sold? Yes. And the proceeds? He stopped reading. Looked up at me. You're giving it away? Not all of it, I said. Just most. Silence filled the room. Dense. Real. You can't be serious, Daniel said, his voice rising. That's over $1 million, Dad. Approximately 1.2. I corrected. Elise pushed her chair back slightly. Why would you do this? She asked, her voice trembling. Not with sadness, but something sharper. I looked at her, really looked. Because I listened, I said. No one spoke. The clock on the wall ticked .7:18 p.m. I heard the conversation. I continued. Sunday. About the house. The accounts Brookside. Color drained from her face. Daniel stood up, abruptly. That was taken out of context. No, I said quietly. It wasn't. Mark said nothing, which in his case said everything. You were planning my timeline, I added. I simply adjusted it. Elise shook her head. Dad, you're overreacting. I'm responding, I said. Another silence. Longer this time. Finally, Daniel let out a short, bitter laugh. So that's it? You punish us? I folded my hands on the table. No, I said. I just stopped rewarding you. That landed. Hard. No one touched the papers after that. At 7:26 p.m., they left. No hugs. No goodbyes. Just the sound of the front door closing. And, for the first time in years, peace settling back into the house. The house felt different the next morning. Not quiet or just honest. I woke up at 6:00 a.m. as always. Some habits survive everything. The floorboards creaked in the same places. The kettle whistled at exactly the same pitch. The refrigerator hummed like it had a small, private opinion about the world. But something had shifted. The illusion was gone. I made my tea and sat at the kitchen table. The same chair I've used for 20 years. Across from me, the other 3 chairs stood empty. They looked larger than usual. Or maybe I just noticed them more. At 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Elise. I don't understand how you could do this to your own family. I read it once. Then I placed the phone face down and finished my tea. At 8:03 a.m., another message. Daniel, this time, you're being manipulated. Whoever that lawyer is, he's taking advantage of you. That one almost made me smile. By 9:20 a.m., there were 3 missed calls. No voicemail. Predictable even now. At 10:00 a.m., I drove to the bank. First National. Same branch I've used since 2001. The teller, Susan, recognized me immediately. Good morning, Mr. Whitaker. Good morning. There's comfort in being known for something other than your assets. I met with Mr. Hargrove, the branch manager. Mid-40s, careful eyes, the kind of man who double-checks signatures even when he doesn't need to. I'd like to confirm the transfer instructions on my accounts, I said, sliding the documents across his desk. He reviewed them slowly. These are recent, he noted. March 12th. He nodded. And you're certain you want no additional authorized users? Certain. No hesitation. No qualifiers. Very well, he said, stamping the confirmation. Everything is in order. In order. 2 words that had taken me 73 years to fully appreciate. The first real consequence came 3 days later. A certified letter. Dalton and Pierce had warned me it might happen. Notice of intent to contest estate documents. Daniel's name at the bottom. Elise listed as interested party. I read it carefully. Twice. Legal language has a way of sounding important while saying very little. By 2:15 p.m., I was back at Pierce's office. This was expected, he said calmly, adjusting his glasses. But it won't go far. They'll try anyway, I said. Yes, he agreed. They usually do. He tapped the document lightly. The recordings, the timeline, the medical evaluations. You've documented everything thoroughly. There's no evidence of coercion, no diminished capacity. In fact, he allowed himself a small professional smile. Your clarity works in your favor. Clarity again. It seems to follow me these days. So this goes nowhere? I asked. It goes somewhere, he said. Just not where they want it to. That evening, I sat in the living room. Margaret's chair remained untouched. I still can't bring myself to sit in it. Some lines, even now, I don't cross. The television was on volume low. Something about market fluctuations. Numbers rising and falling like they always do. Irrelevant mostly. At 6:48 p.m., my phone rang again. Elise. I watched it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then silence. No message this time. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the neighbor's sprinkler clicked back and forth. Left, right. Left, right. Same rhythm as always. Predictable. Honest. I thought about everything that had happened over the past few weeks. The dinner. The conversation. The documents. The look on their faces when they realized the numbers no longer belonged to them. And I felt nothing dramatic. No anger. No triumph. Just a quiet, steady sense of balance. They had measured me in dollars. I had corrected the equation. At 9:05 p.m., I turned off the lights and headed to bed. The house settled around me, familiar and unchanging. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I understood something simple. Family, like money, reveals its true nature when you stop giving it away. And, in the end, I didn't lose $1 million. I just stopped losing myself. The last change I made wasn't on paper. It happened on a quiet Thursday morning, 2 weeks after everything settled into its new shape. The legal notices had stopped. The calls had slowed. Even the silence from my children had become consistent, predictable, like the sprinkler next door. At 7:30 a.m., I was in the garage, sorting through old boxes. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to. There's a difference. Receipts from 1997. Warranty cards for appliances that no longer exist. Margaret's handwriting on grocery lists. Milk, eggs, don't forget honey. I kept that one. At the bottom of a box marked Taxes 2003 to 2008, I found a small envelope. Inside was a photograph. Elise and Daniel. Summer of 1989. Both of them sitting on the hood of my old Ford, legs dangling, laughing at something I must have said. No tension, no calculation, just children. I sat down on the step stool and looked at it longer than I expected. For a moment, just a moment, I wondered when exactly that changed. But I didn't stay there. Memory is a place you visit, not a place you live. At 10:15 a.m., I drove back to Dalton and Pierce. Not for a correction, for a confirmation. Pierce looked up as I entered, slightly surprised. Mr. Whitaker, everything all right? Everything is exactly as it should be, I said, taking a seat. He nodded slowly. How can I help? I'd like to add one final clause, I said. He raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, just reached for his pen. Go on. I placed a photograph on the desk between us. For my children, I said, I want a letter included with the distribution, to be delivered with their checks. Of course, he said. What would you like it to say? I didn't answer immediately, because this part mattered. I wrote it that afternoon at my kitchen table. Same place I'd eaten countless meals. Same chair. Same light, falling across the wood. The letter wasn't long. No accusations. No lectures. Just facts. I gave you everything when it mattered. You taught me what mattered to you. This is the difference. I paused after that, pen hovering, then added one more line. I hope one day you understand why this is fair. I signed it, dated it, 1:42 p.m., folded it once. That was enough. Weeks passed. Spring settled in properly. The magnolia tree in the yard bloomed the way it always does, quietly, without asking for attention. I fixed a loose hinge on the back gate, replaced a light bulb in the hallway. Small things, real things. No one called, not Elise, not Daniel, and that told me everything I needed to know. On a warm evening in April, I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea. The air smelled like fresh grass and distant rain. Somewhere a dog barked twice and stopped. The world, as usual, continued without consulting me. I thought about numbers. $872,000 for the house, $417,000 in investments, $1.2 million in total. Give or take. For months, maybe years. That's what I had been reduced to. A figure, an outcome, a waiting period. But sitting there, watching the light fade slowly over the fence line, I realized something simple. They had been counting my money. I had started counting something else entirely. Respect, silence, peace. And for the first time in a long while, the numbers finally added up. I took a slow sip of tea, set the cup down beside me, and leaned back in my chair. No noise, no demands, no expectations, just the quiet certainty of a life properly accounted for. Because, in the end, they didn't lose an inheritance. They lost access